Hey everybody, thanks for joining us here again today. We're in our final episode of the season, which is another exciting topic that we've got on deck for you. So previously we've talked a little bit about the genesis of Platform One, some of the early days, some of the things we learned throughout the first 2 years or so. But the exciting thing about what we've got in store for you today is we actually have the Platform One Materiel Leader and his deputy on to talk about the future of Platform One. So I'll kick it over to Colonel Viola first, and then Duong, allowing you guys to introduce yourself, give a little bit of background, and then we'll jump right in.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Drew. So Material Leader for Platform One, been here for about a year now, just coming up on that. And it's been a whirlwind of a year. There's a lot that's gone on in the past year and the evolution of the program itself, everything from scaling to some of the extended CR funding challenges that always pop up. And like with any organization, you always have you kind of have what you want to get done, and then you've got the fires that pop up along the way. So it's been a challenging year, but it's also been a very rewarding year. You know, we've had a lot of firsts over the past year. The organization as a whole has continued to kind of progress and evolve, which I'm super happy about. And I think in the grand scheme of things, you know, my role in the organization is, you know, you see a lot of the upside down org charts and everything like that. We don't have one of those. Ours is actually on Confluence, but it doesn't mean that isn't true, right? So ultimately, my job here in the organization is to support the organization as a whole to ensure that customers are getting what they need and what they desire. And then as we go into FY23, also looking at the investor aspect of this, which is, you know, the core investment that's coming in, and how do we ensure that we're kind of staying at the center of that conversation for the Air Force and the DoD. Duong, over to you.
Hi, my name is Duong Hang, and I'm the deputy for Platform One. So I'm Colonel Viola's deputy, and I've been here since April of 21, and so it's still coming up a year. And the biggest reason why I came to Platform One was, frankly, I wanted to come to an organization that was the closest thing to a startup, and I really got that in more ways than I expected, and in a lot of great ways that I expect as well. The thing that I heard, a lot of people have heard from Platform One before Platform One became, you know, before I got to Platform One, was it was a place that basically wanted to do something different and break the mode that a DoD was currently on the path in terms of delivering IT services. And this was before, you know, this is as the pandemic was happening. And so what I saw from this organization was a lot of energy, especially from people that actually knew technology and what it can do for our users. And so that's something that really excited me. And so when I had the option to join, I did. So.
Okay, appreciate that, Duong and Colonel Viola. I think Duong kind of hinted at it, but we'll start this question with Colonel Viola, because I think you both took very different paths to arriving at the organization, especially because one of you is military, one of you is a government civilian. Colonel Viola, I think your story in particular is pretty unique of how you left and got here. Can you walk us through kind of how that all went down, the parts that you can share, and why you were excited, or maybe things that you were hesitant about? And then, Duong, I know you were a Navy civilian when we found you in the interview process. You want to talk about maybe how that process went and what you were excited about too? I know you already talked a little bit about why, but we'll start with Colonel Viola and just kind of give us your background on how you got here.
Yeah, no, thanks for teeing that question up, Austin. And yeah, so, absolutely military. I know you guys probably can't see, but I'm in my new P1 uniform though, which is typically something, either it's our Grogu P1 shirt, or in this case, it's just kind of DevSecOps, because, you know, it's something that's foundational to what we do. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the story of how I got here starts long before kind of I was asked to come here. You know, being in the military, I think I'm a little bit of a unique case, especially on the acquisition side. You know, my AFSC says that I'm an acquisition officer, but the vast majority of my time I've spent on the offensive side of cyber operations. Did time at NSA in the CNODP program, you know, kind of did a lot of the traditional Air Force officer things. But then things really started picking up kind of after I went to school and then went to the Pentagon and kind of got into that ecosystem. Dr. Roper had just kind of showed up there, and it was bringing a different perspective to how we do acquisitions. You know, from there, ended up going out to LA Air Force Base. And so my wife was super happy. She's like, yes, finally, we're not on the East Coast anymore. Because I mean, the vast majority of my assignments have been kind of on the East Coast, which is beautiful, but there's a whole other country out there to see. So got to LA, And literally after about 4 or 5 months of being there, I get this call. It's like, hey, we've got this opportunity for you, but you need to kind of move next year. And so kind of seized that opportunity, which got me to Texas as the 346 Test Squadron commander. And so was really kind of enjoying my time over there, making change on the test front. If you kind of look at the overall ecosystem, right? I mean, test is an integral piece of that. If you have DevSecOps and then test becomes that waterfall piece at the end, then you really don't have DevSecOps, right? Like you don't have that agile CI/CD development and delivery that you're looking for the warfighter. But then, pandemic hit, and it just so happened that my boss in the Pentagon ended up being the upper SML for Platform One. And, in the Pentagon, sometimes you got Friday afternoons where you can open a beverage of your choice and you kind of have some of these more in-depth conversations, water cooler talk, if you will. And and so me and Colonel Carrero at the time we had several of those, and we really started strategizing on, or at least highlighting some of those systemic issues that we saw in the Pentagon. And so long story short, I get this call from Colonel Carrero is saying like, hey, I've got this really challenging program over here that kind of aligns with, all the fixes that we want to make and or that we had talked about in the Pentagon. He's like, but it is a challenging program. So with most things, with challenge comes also a lot of reward. And so that's kind of how I got to Platform One. I saw it as an opportunity to continue to push the envelope for the Air Force. There's not many times in an officer's career that you have the opportunity to actually engage and push the envelope and actually have those things stick. And Platform One's doing that, right? Engaging at the Pentagon, engaging on social media, just like pushing both technology and the culture forward. And that's how I got here. Kind of most days love my job. Sometimes, it can become a little bit painful just swimming upstream. But yeah, that, you kind of lick your wounds after one of those meetings and you kind of get back in the fight because the mission's important.
Hey, thanks, sir. And Duong, I think I actually sat on your interview panel, so I'm interested in your perspective on how you ended up here.
Yeah, and for the audience, it's really unusual to have an 04 major be part of the interview panel for a GS-15 position. So I thought it was the most unique thing. I know, hey, this is Platform One, right? This is how we do it. I think one of the precursors to Platform One that most of us outside of the Air Force community saw was Kessel Run, right? They were the poster child for DevSecOps and doing software development. And so that was something that I kind of gained an appreciation for from the outside. I went and visited TDY while I was still with the Navy. And, as I looked around, I said, you know what, this is a place that I want to be a part of in terms of being able to support airmen or support the warfighters that want to actually develop software. I thought that was the most exciting thing ever. And then when Platform One started coming about and they came on the scene, really when the pandemic started happening and mattered most, at the time I was like, a lot of other organizations that were working from home, or at least being forced to work from home. There weren't very many tools that was available, like the CVR that was there. It was like, not even there yet, and it was promises that it was going to come out. And when Nick Shalon came out and said, hey, we're going to make this open for everyone, I mean, I jumped on top of it. And I was actually one of the people that just said, hey, I came in as I'm an Air Force reserve as well. So I initially got an account with Mattermost. Then I started to help a lot of the Navy folks that didn't have ways to communicate securely to actually to get them Mattermost accounts. I stood up a Mattermost team for the Navy organizations, and then basically just started being almost an administrator. The other thing that really got me excited was the fact that I was kind of in the ground zero in terms of at least help standing up part of the Mattermost for the Navy side, was that I had, and myself and a lot of folks had such unfettered access to the people at Fleet One in terms of setting up the capabilities. And they were super responsive. And then of course the community just sort of fed off of that in terms of being able to help each other in terms of, expert tips on how to use Mattermost, setting up for folks and all these things and working from home. And it was very, the community aspect of that in terms of the user base, along with the folks at P1, really solidified my desire to be a part of an organization like that. And so, and I think I said that in my interview with Austin, right? That's why it excited me to be part to actually be part of P1 and to really make sure that, we continue doing this for the warfighters out there.
Awesome, gentlemen. Yeah, thanks for those responses. I think it's really great that during both of your whys, you touched on what Platform One's mission is, right? Because that's a huge part of our culture, is believing in and why we're all here. And actually, the funny thing is we're on episode 10 of this podcast now, and I don't think we've ever directly come out and said what Platform One does or how it actually enables people. So since you guys, as ML and Deputy Director of P1, I think this is the perfect place to ask the question. And feel free to whip out your buzzword bingo cards if you're playing at home. But turn it over to Colonel Viola first and then let Duong layer in. What would you say Platform One's elevator pitch is?
Yeah, so that's really good. So first, we're being super formal here. I don't think I've heard the word ML as much since I've been here. So I mean, we're kind of teammates. So yeah. So anyway, do with that with what you will. But yeah, I think with the exception of my signature block, ML is not something that comes up very often. It's more just a bunch of hopefully visionaries. I guess time will tell. Just looking to make it better for the DoD and the warfighter. So just to get after your question there, Drew, I think our mission and vision really just sums it up well. And then I'll try to elaborate on it because I do get that question a lot, and I would say my answer changes depending on the audience because I want it to be received as intended. So our mission is basically to accelerate secure software delivery for the DoD. Short to the point, that's really all we're trying to do. We're trying to enable that capability to get into the warfighter's hands. And then kind of the vision aspect of that, which is, how do you get there, right? I mean, some of you have probably already read the We Believe memo that we jointly put out with Kessel Run. We got such a big response from the various software factories out there and players in the ecosystem that Austin skillfully crafted a We All Believe memo to get that out to the ecosystem, and we're almost seeing that a little bit as an agile manifesto for the DoD. But what it really gets after, our first thing is collaboration over mandates, right? And our vision kind of embraces that as well. It's like a collaborative defense department enabled by continuous delivery. And so when you kind of put those two things together, I think it sums it up from a formal standpoint. What I've told senior leaders many times and have received a lot of vertical head nods is, at the end of the day, we are going to start the next conflict with the tools that the warfighter has. I feel very strongly that we will likely not be able to win that conflict with those tools. We're going to have to adapt at the speed of relevance. And if that's, enhanced capability, if that's patching our systems, resilience, being able to get back off the ground, if we are susceptible in an area that we didn't know about, all of that really comes down to operating at a pace that we haven't operated before in the DoD. I mean, and software and a lot of the technological advancements that has happened over the past 5 or 10 years really enable that. Enables airmen to be able to contribute to the fight. In previous conflicts, if you're on the front lines, you're gonna bust out your duct tape and your parachute cord. You're gonna make things work, right? And so, what does that look like for software? And I think airmen are doing that today. But as a DoD, I'll speak for the Air Force, we're definitely not enabling that, right? We're not making that very easy for them. They're creating workarounds that out of necessity that we could do a better job and kind of have them do it securely. So yeah, I think really what it comes down to is that mission and vision where we're trying to enable our airmen who are innovators innovate, and then do that in a way that they can get capability to the field at a speed that is needed.
Tugging at my heartstrings. Thank you. Duong, anything you wanted to add?
I think the Colonel has kind of said it all. I just want to highlight the things that we are delivering capabilities for our airmen to solve airmen problems, and we're doing so in a way that allows them to focus on the problems versus the infrastructure. Because, and for us at Platform One, we provide the infrastructure and the platform for our airmen to focus on the problem set, which is the mission to solve all the airmen's missions, which is the software.
All right, I got a fun one here for you next, because it's easy at an organization to focus on the challenges maybe and not the opportunities or successes, especially when you're trying to push the envelope So we'll start with Dong this time so that Colonel Viola can't steal all the good answers first. I'm going to ask you to narrow it down to one. Obviously, there's lots of challenges, but I want you each to pick one that you feel is the biggest challenge for Platform One today in trying to achieve that mission and vision.
I like how your questions are challenges, but then you limited me to one answer. So I like that. I think the biggest challenge is getting a culture, not just within Platform One, but the entire DoD and the federal government around the idea of agile, which is really about learning fast in a way that is the way humans actually learn. And that really encompasses a whole lot of different topics, from the way we do budgeting in the PBBE cycles to the way that we do our software, our hardware, and how we take risk. And so what that really means is that, we try to predict, we pretend to think that we can predict the future with great clarity. We then try to say, well, based on that predictions, we think it's going to cost this much, which is a prediction on budget and how much, and that's the promise, and that's the expectations being created. And once you have all that set, then we try to think that we're going to be able to noodle through a lot of these really hard challenges, especially in the technology space, to get after it. And we're going to deliver every single thing that's on that checklist. And so the problem is that is a fallacy in terms of the way the world works and the way humans work. And really, we need to enable a culture where we are able to identify, learn what's going on in the environment, what we're doing, and then be able to quickly make adjustments both in how we budget and how we develop software. And so that is really, to me, the biggest challenge, as it kind of highlights every single thing in a way that we work with risk tolerances we are willing to accept, and ultimately kind of like our future as a defense department.
Yeah, that's a great one. Maybe rephrase a little bit as like we're this little tiny thing in the greater context of the DoD that operates very, very differently than the overarching system that supports us. And I think a lot of times we get viewed as a virus within the system and get attacked by a lot of white blood cells along the way. So Colonel Viola, over to you. Biggest challenge. You can't just say what Dong said. You have to pick a different one if it was the same.
Yeah, I know. At first I thought this was the easier position in the end, but now it's the harder one. I see how that works. But yeah, I'm going to maneuver a little bit, right? So we have a lot of challenges, and then I'll answer you what your biggest one is. We have challenges on the funding front. We have challenges on fracturing of baseline and tech. We have challenges as far as building a community. Communication as a whole, right? Rice Bowl fighting, misunderstandings of what Platform One is and where we're headed and where we're going, right? So a lot of I would say mine and Dong's, and probably in Austin, yours as well, when you're, when you're in the seat there, you get not too many people. Every once in a while, we'll get people go like, "You're amazing." But a lot of times what most people like, is the naysayers are the most vocal. It's like, "You suck," right? Which is good because that's customer feedback, and that's what gets us to continue to get better, right? But I think our biggest challenge at the end of the day is people. People are the biggest challenge. People are the most important part of this, because at the end of the day, it comes down to the individual person. And I do like a lot of the things that Simon Sinek has said. I've been able to catch a couple of his talks, follow him on LinkedIn, etc. But he had something on LinkedIn the other day that really resonated with me. And it's not a one-for-one for Platform One, but I think it drives home the point. And his quote is, "We don't do business with companies, we do business with people. Business is always human." And so whether that is at the DoD level, whether that's at the Platform One level, whether that's in corporate America, at the end of the day, people is what gets things accomplished. Culture is super important to an organization. People are the foundation of that culture. And so it's a little bit along the same lines of what Dong said. I think at P1, we have a culture. It is a full-time job just to maintain culture, if you will, especially in a geographically separated organization, and an organization that is scaling, and you're bringing in. So think about it, you've got a really hot culture and you're bringing in cold people into that culture. So over time, if you too quickly, you kind of, it's something that's a challenge for us as we're growing and we're scaling as an organization. We're continually working on that with some success and also with some failures. But at the end of the day, if you have the human aspect there and people understand that even though they might not agree with your decision, or even though that we have some setbacks, as long as you're able to have that conversation, like with any relationship, a business relationship in this case, you'll be able to work through it and keep the family together, if you will.
Yeah, once again, Guys, really appreciate those responses. And the cool thing about what you just touched on, Colonel Viola, is like people are certainly the biggest challenge, but they're also the biggest catalyst for success. And we've got a great team at Platform One. So I'm not worried at all about any of the challenges that come up because I know that the team will find a way to get through it. We did promise the listeners that we would talk a little bit about the future, and we haven't done that yet. So this first kind of topic as it relates to the future is actually something that came out of our user panel. So that's pretty exciting. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it, how it aligns to our vision and our mission we've already talked about. We talked a little bit about the funding aspect too, but I think Duong got to answer first on that last question. So we'll go to Colonel Viola first, and then Duong, if he wants to add some stuff. Question is basically, does enterprise funding enable us to allow airmen to code and deploy their own applications for free?
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. But yeah, we've been trying to address this for the better part of a year, the year that I've been here, and I think Austin was also working that before then. We fundamentally believe that out there are airmen solving other airmen's problems. And you see that through Spark Tank, you see that through a lot of these initiatives out there. And we think Platform One could be an enabler of that innovation. We've been working with Ensign and AFWorks to try to figure out how we could do that for the commercial sector. Where a commercial entity could come in and at the end say like, oh, look at this great product, and not have to wait 18 months to actually get it fielded. But it's also, we've also been working with he's called the Wizard, right? So he's an F-16 pilot who basically had a really bad experience with their PEC system that they use, and so he got in the basement of his house and coded up a replacement for it. And, long story short, we're enabling him to now move that system onto a secure platform that will allow continuous integration and delivery of it for I think 16 or 18 fighter squadrons out there. And so that's just one example. We also did that with oh man, I forgot his name. Austin probably remembers him, but he's a major up at U2 Fed Labs, and he was I don't know, he basically read through the regulations and stood up his own federal laboratory to solve a problem, right? Like he was like, the U2 was not getting the love that it needed and the technology infusion that it needed. And we were able to kind of partner with what he was doing, get him on a secure platform again. I think it was like somewhere around like 16, 17 days, 18 days, and get Platform One Big Bang on a U2 Intel pod flying, right? And that's something that when I go back to how we're going to win tomorrow's fight, that's how you do it, right? That's how you do it. You do it smartly. It's not reckless or without risk, but it is calculated, and it is a way to get after getting capability to the warfighter faster. So talking about the future, right? So FY23, centralized funding. My challenge to the team is like, we need to set aside some dollars, and in the grand scheme of things, it's probably small compared to the funding that we'll get, but we need to set that aside to support these programs like Spark Tank and Airman Coders. What we haven't figured out yet is how we get sponsors, if you will, for this, because it's great that an airman is delivering something, but you also want an operational sponsor that's going to use it after it's delivered. And then, that airman might PCS, at the end of the day. And right now, the Air Force is not necessarily set up for having that airman continue to manage and maintain that capability. So we want to set that capability up for success. We're working through the construct and the framework of how to do that. Again, short answer is yes. We absolutely want to do that. And we think that the core funding coming in FY23 is going to enable that activity.
Yeah, that's awesome. As a former airman who had to learn, I think a bunch of people are going to be excited about that future. Duong, anything you wanted to add on that particular topic?
I just wanted to say that there's two parts to this, right? There's a code and deploy. I think the code part, I think the us and Platform One having central funding would enable people to code. Whether they can deploy or not, that's the next question. And that's going to depend on a lot of other factors, especially the authorizing officials for the particular mission set that those airmen are trying to support. We need to make sure that they have an understanding. I'm going to squeeze in another challenge here, is trying to bring together the community that is supposed to support the airmen to do their mission, to give them the capability to do so, and trust that they're building something that they need and that is safe for the mission. And so that's something that we need to make sure that the community rallies around, especially on the cybersecurity side, so that they can actually deploy it for not free, but for a lot cheaper than waiting for months and months and months for it to get authorized.
Yeah, and shout out to Major Tierney Ray Tierney, goes by Newt, call sign, was the YouTube Fed Labs guy. Crazy smart, and it shows that you can do anything when you put your mind to it. Okay, last question before we get into story time, which is my favorite part of the podcast. The ecosystem that's kind of evolved around enterprise IT, both in the Air Force and the DoD, has gotten a little bit interesting over the last few years as kind of the Air Force started their move to the cloud and platforms and DevOps and digital engineering and a lot of these buzzwords you hear. There's just a lot of stuff going on. So we'll start with Duong this time. As we move forward, what role does Platform One play in the software ecosystem at large, especially with all these other software factories, a software wing, the other services are standing up similar capabilities under ABMS and JADC2. I mean, where does P1 fit in? What do we do and what do we not do?
So that's a loaded question because there's a lot to both of those parts. But I would say going forward, Platform One is evolving from an organization that was providing something directly by doing it ourselves because no one else did it. Whether it's Mattermost, whether it's providing the first DoD DevSecOps compliant baseline for the DoD. That's the beginning part, and we're evolving that today. What we're trying to move towards is actually galvanizing the community, the organization, to provide and add to the capabilities that we're starting off today as a platform layer with Big Bang Core, and adding to maybe suggestions on how to improve Party Bus, and obviously providing more containers that are useful to the community through Iron Bank, is to orchestrate an ecosystem of DoD open source contributors, because we can't do this alone in our small organization. And really, frankly, we're not really designed to actually go and do this for everyone. We want to enable other people to build upon what we've done. So that's really the biggest challenge. And then we can pull back and focus in on the things that benefits everyone in terms of building a Big Bang or an Iron Bank technologies, capabilities, so people can leverage that over and over and over.
Thanks, Duong. Colonel Viola, over to you.
Yeah, so along the same vein, so we've really been focused here, Platform One, in enhancing the BB talk. I think it's core to what we're going to do in 23 and out. We're going to have a hybrid model where the Air Force will fund that core development, and then for users of our Party Bus, they will be paying for their own use of cloud and licenses and the help desk and everything else associated with that, right? So Party Bus is like a PaaS, a platform as a service, turnkey solution with continuous authority to field. So yeah, I think Party Bus will always be this ramp, whether it's for airmen that are looking to get their innovation into the field, or whether that's for a program office that's going through their DevSecOps evolution. What we've seen is, people come on. Party Bus seems to be a good enough solution initially, and sometimes it ends up being a good enough solution in the long term, right? But other times programs go through this customer maturity model, and they kind of realize, like, hey, as I've matured as an organization, I really like everything Party Bus does, but there's like this 25% that I need customized and tailored for my mission and my needs. And that's where we're looking to kind of off-ramp them from Party Bus onto, to a software factory or to one of our resellers that can then take Big Bang, which is the exact same product that Party Bus consumes, but tailor it, because Big Bang is highly tailorable for those specific mission needs. So I think, that's going to be one of those roles that Platform One will continue to play. The other one is 100% aligned with what Duong said, where, we want to drive a DoD open source ecosystem that's modeled after the kind of like the CNCF. I've used the analogy many times, a lot of times with some of the big defense contractors of like, I think there's money to be made, but there's a different business model that we're really trying to inflate here. And so, Red Hat did this many years ago with Fedora and Red Hat. You see a lot of other a lot of other commercial organizations still be able to make money around open source products. And I don't think the DoD is immune from that. I think it is something that's valid, and we're pursuing that with our commercialization pilot to try to explore what that actually looks like. And the analogy that I've used a lot of times here is like Blockbuster versus Netflix, and how like the folks that hold on to the Blockbuster model might find themselves out of business because Netflix is kind of pushing the envelope forward on a business model that might fit the future of software better than what we have today. And the other piece of this too, because we're talking about kind of roles and responsibilities and whatnot, I fundamentally believe that there's an inversely proportional relationship between the size of an organization and kind of the agility of that organization's. And it's, I mean, you probably can't point to at 300 people, you become less agile, or at 3,000 people, you become less agile, right? It's not something that you can really do, but there is like a relationship there. And so very conscious at Platform One to ensure that we always have those unicorns. We have the high speed talent. And if I was going to kind of look at myself, Austin likes to call them 10Xers, right? So we like to have those 10Xers on the team. But I see Platform One as not being like the army of software, right? Like not to go out there and take lots of mass and apply it at a problem. I see us a lot more like special forces and really pushing the envelope forward and attacking very specific problems for the DoD.
Awesome. And I'm actually going to steal this next quote from Austin. You're actually less agile with 2 people than you are with 1 person. And so I 100% agree with that inverse relationship as we scale. Okay. So now, favorite part of the podcast, we get to hear everybody's favorite story. I think Austin has alluded this entire time, so I'm going to ask him to go third as well. So we just heard from Colonel Viola. So we'll start with Duong, go to Colonel Viola, then Austin. Favorite story from Platform One?
I got a lot of different things in my head, but I think the one that really resonated with me the most being at Platform One was when we had the first Platform One Objectives and Key Results conference, I guess you want to call it that. And, and I'm not saying this because Drew is here, but, Drew led that workshop that we had at 500 Varro in San Antonio. It was the first one that I've ever been to. I think a lot of people were going through the same thing. And I think one of the things that really struck me was it was amazing to see the team from all parts of the US, from all parts of the functional areas, within Platform One, coming together in person and really trying to understand each other and what we're trying to do as a collective that because the day-to-day stuff, we were focusing on the mission and getting stuff done. And, there's a lot of built up questions or misalignments that occur over time. And so that was a great way to get the team together and unify around certain messages and things that we were working on together, and also identify those challenges, especially between the teams, and how do we get after that in terms of the objectives and key results that we're developing. It was such a great event. And again, I think, what Drew did, Austin was pushing behind from as well. The team and the rest of the team that kind of built that was one of the best times I've had so far, even though I've been here for such a short period of time at Platform One.
Thanks for the shout out, Dom. I was just the front face of what everybody in the organization kind of was leaning towards and thinking. So I just put words on slides, but I think the overall momentum was already there. So I made it easy to facilitate. All right, Colonel Viola, over to you.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a little bit of a cop-out answer because there are so many stories that I really don't have one favorite. But what I will tell you is there is something I absolutely appreciate at Platform One, that I've only had maybe once or twice in my career, and that's like camaraderie, right? And I think, Drew, you alluded to it earlier, we've got the right people on the team, no matter what challenges arise, that we can actually get after that. And just that statement alone, I think, says volumes, because I could probably go talk to many other folks, if not everybody, and they kind of feel the same way. If I was going to use a buzzword, because Austin kind of introduced that at the beginning, I know psychological safety is one of those buzzwords that kind of gets thrown out a lot. But really what it comes down to for me is having an open and honest discussion across the team, no matter what rank you wear or what position you're in, and being able to promote that when we at every opportunity we can, really starts building that camaraderie. So whether it's like a team building event that we have to just get people out of the office and tie into back to that human aspect, so we don't see each other as a handle on Mattermost or as an email or something like that. We see the face and the human behind every one of those comments. I think that's really that has driven many stories that I've appreciated in my 1 year at Platform One, and I'm looking forward to many more.
Yeah, for sure. Some of those team building events, being hiking the incline together, definitely builds some camaraderie through shared misery. All right, Austin, what you got?
Okay, we're strapped for time, so mine'll be quick. There's really two that come to mind, so I'm going to steal two, and they're very different. One will kind of talk to the culture, and one about the mission impact. The first is I remember the very first time I stepped foot on Catalyst campus and met the Space Camp guys. And it's interesting that you're wearing your Space Camp shirt today, Drew. I think Cody and I and Rob Slaughter were talking about acquisition strategy and how AFWorks was kind of changing the SBIR game. And we had a conversation over a beer, and I think it was 10:30 in the morning. So I probably should admit that, but it really made me, I was like, what are these people and what are they doing here? That was back in I think June of 2019. So that was an interesting introduction to the team. And then I'll go back to when we had Major Justin Poole come to one of our daily stand-ups and talk about the value delivered during Operational Allied Refuge. And for OPSEC reasons, I won't go into the specifics of what he shared, but he's a C-17 pilot. And he shared with us just some from the forward operating location, some of the things that we were able to provide him and his team real time through DevOps, through actually delivering software from customer request back into production on an hourly cycle instead of something that takes months and years. And my favorite part about it wasn't just Justin Poole speaking, but I saw people on our stand-up on Zoom on camera crying. And I literally saw our contractor teammates crying because they knew that the work they were doing was valuable to the warfighter. And for me, that was like a bow kind of on the entire experience of like, hey, we made DevOps work and we made it work in a meaningful way. And in a way that it changed people's lives, both on the edge using the capability, but the people delivering the capability as well. And so to me, that was like the first time I saw end-to-end delivery and also the impact that it had on people and the way they felt about it.